Hello everyone and welcome back to the DMside. Today's a very special day because I picked up a brand new microphone for the camera. I'm hoping to get rid of some of that white noise that's always in the background, I've realized when I'm editing. So let me know if it sounds a little bit clearer. If not, I'm gonna try and tweak it and see how I can improve the sound quality of these videos moving forward. But today's video, we are going to continue on our journey through the vlog series of how I've been running Waterdeep Dragonheist. If you are considering running it yourself for your group of friends, I'd encourage you to click on the link that comes up just about here. It'll take you back to the beginning of the series, so that way you can move along through the journey that we've had over the past 12 weeks. But if you are currently at chapter 4, chapter 5, or you've just kept up with the series, then this video is directly for you. So let's jump straight into the video. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below how the sound quality went. Let's do it. Alright, so starting with last session where we left off, our players were headed to the old tower in the dock ward after getting the information from Fenris that is where he hid the Stone of Galore, knowing that he was about to be taken in by the Watch. Once they got there, they entered into the tower fine enough and realized almost immediately that this place stops magic. They tried to cast a few cantrips, they had a look at their own magic items and realized that they were inside an anti-magic field after a couple of arcana checks. From there, they decided, okay, well, let's have a look around. They found some weapons, they picked them up for the ones that needed something to defend themselves with, and then proceeded to investigate. So, Hootie and Giorno went downstairs to the basement. They found a playing card deck to realize that some people may have been here previously. And also they found a secret door into the teleportation circle room, which is awesome. So they don't really know how to use it, but they can just understand that that's what that was through a couple of checks. Moving back upstairs, we have Watch, Sparrow, and Damien moving through the spiral staircase to get up to the top. When they get to the top, the very first thing they see is 5 drow. They see 3 drow gunslingers, 2 of them climbing out of the window. As they're moving out, they are turning invisible once they leave that anti-magic field. The 3rd gunslinger turns and says to them that he is going to stay and that they need to get the stone back to the ship. The other 2 are regular drows that are there to just kind of bolster it, because they're level 5 right now. They're meant to be level 4, but I decided that I don't like it when the campaign stories finish you on a certain level because you never really get those benefits. So I always up my players to that level and then we kind of sit there for a bit. So they're already level 5, so I needed to make the encounters just that little bit more challenging. So battle ensues after that, and we have Sparrow, Hootie, and Damien taking on the drow inside the tower, as well as Giorno and Watch climbing out onto the roof and giving chase along the rooftops of Waterdeep. Now, the 3 that stayed back to fight the drow managed to eventually kill them off through some very interesting attempts and without any magic, and Hootie now has a gun, which is very exciting. He's got some ammo, so very, very, very cool. He feels very badass. But they realize that they don't have the movement to actually catch up to the chase, so they decide to stay there. But then we flash forward over to the rooftop chase. We've got Giorno and we've got Watch chasing after the drow, who are about 60 feet away from them, on average. Now, all of a sudden, Watch thinks, well, I've got this spell for this. He casts Expeditious Retreat, which doubles his movement, which is fantastic, and he starts catching up to them. Giorno, being a monk, has 40 foot of movement, so he is using key points and he is dashing to catch up to them as well, and eventually they do catch up to them not far from their destination. That's when Giorno manages to grapple onto one of them. He palms off the stone to the other drow, and then they have to let go and keep chasing, jumping over rooftops. The drow casts darkness to prevent the others from seeing them, but Giorno manages to run in and grab onto the drow. His hands are free, his friend comes along, palming off the Stone of Galore one more time. They're very low on health, all of them except for the drow that now has the stone, as he jumps down into an abandoned dock area with a wrecked ship, and he just stands there holding his gun and waiting and waiting. Giorno and Watch knock out the other drow that they had captured, taking him as a prisoner and allowing the other drow to get away. They consider going down, they take a few pop shots, but then all of a sudden his escape shows up. Big Belchy, the mechanical dragon turtle that has now been repaired by the gnome wizards that are, the Lanternese gnome wizards that are on the eye catcher, have fixed it up, and now they have possession of it. He jumps on top and he sails away back to the eye catcher to give the stone to Zardos Zord. So where do the players go from here? They sit down, they have a chat, and they realize that, well, we keep coming back to this ship. It's time to go and get on it. They wake up the drow prisoner that they had knocked out, and after speaking with him, he doesn't want to lose his life, and he totally understands that he will be safer on the ship. So the last thing he wants to do is really frustrate and annoy these adventurers who will probably just kill him outright. So he agrees to their terms. He says that he can get them a meeting with Captain Zardos Zord should they take him back to the ship. So after taking a short rest, they return to the ship with their prisoner and are let on board. Now, he is actually one of the captains of the ship, and so he calls for a dinghy to come by. They get on with 2 other drow, and they sail across to the eye catcher, where they meet and dine with Zardos Zord. Now, through this time, we got to remember that the Stone of Galore can choose to attune and not attune to a person because of the aboleth. It can choose whether or not to communicate, essentially, which is mentioned in case your players get the stone early. So I decided that the stone was refusing to attune to Zardos Zord. So he has this meeting with them, and they kind of talk about what do they really want. Are they good characters? Are they heroes of Waterdeep, or are they doing a job? And we all kind of realize that apart from Watch, the players don't actually really mind who gets the treasure, as long as they don't really get in trouble, and it doesn't mean that Waterdeep will fall, because then that would ruin, well, their business that they're building up. Watch, on the other hand, has been designed to protect Waterdeep, and so the last thing he wants is for the money to go to the villains. So there is a little bit of a tug and pull there where they go, well, if we can't all agree on working for Zardos Zord and being the bad guys, then we can't be the bad guys. So we're going to have to figure this out as we go. But all we know right now is we may work for him and try and double cross him later, and maybe even call in a favor from Lariel Silverhand or from Mert or any of our other factions. So the dinner continues. Zardos Zord gives up a little bit of information about the stone not wanting to attune to him and how he has a deal. He will give them the chance to attune to the stone. In return, they have to tell him where the location of the vault is, or moving on from that, he may have another option for them. So they attune, they find out the location, and then they start trying to figure out a deal. Zardos Zord says, well, if you get me the gold, I'm going to give you 5,000 gold out of it. And if you can pick up, if there is particularly a dragon stuff there that I really, really want, I'm going to give you another 5,000 gold. Now, the players did ask him what he wants to do with the treasure, and funnily enough for them, he said, well, I want to return it to Waterdeep because he wants good standing with Lariel Silverhand. He has his ulterior motives where he wants to put Luskan on the map. So that kind of answered their problems. Watch was like, but he's doing it because he wants something bad out of this, but at the same time, by giving it to Waterdeep, no one is going to get hurt. Waterdeep will continue to run. If this was Xanathar's guild, the Zentarum with Manshun, or even the Castellantas, that becomes a real big problem because it actually really does affect Waterdeep. Whereas Zardos Zord is actually the best person for Watch to trust out of all the enemies because he really is going for a much bigger game where Luskan, the actual city of Luskan, is on the map and part of the Lord's Alliance and has a lot more power and sway along the Sword Coast. It's not just about trying to take Waterdeep, it's about being on a similar level to Waterdeep, which is really interesting. Zardos Zord, in my opinion, is by far the best villain of the game, and I'm very happy that he became the villain for my players because I would have been happy with all the others, but I just think there's so much more you can do with him post-game. But that does leave me with a bit of a problem because now they've figured out that they know where the vault is, and they know they need 3 keys. Now their 3 keys are, they need a painting of a dwarf miner worth 250 gold pieces, which Watch has painted and we've valued and made sure that it's worth that much money. They need a drunken elf, which the players have decided that they're going to run a drinking competition at their tavern, And all the proceeds are going to go to the families of the elves who were killed way back in chapter 2, funnily enough, by Zardoz gunslinger captains. Anyway, and on the last thing is they need a shape changer. And they've had quite a few run-ins now with the doppelgangers, and one of them not really being friends with Hooty, but definitely saying, look, if you need anything, come to the graveyard and maybe we can talk. So they kind of have access to what they need. So that's where we're going to start with this next session. My big problem now, though, is in the book, it says that Zardoz doesn't really want to kill them. He shows up when they have gotten the treasure and basically tells them, hey, give me the treasure or I'll kill you. So because they're working for him, if they agree, they're just going to give him the treasure, and then, well, that's the end of the campaign. That's it. It's done. They succeed in giving Zardoz the money, and then Zardoz will then pass it on to Lariel Silverhand and achieve everything. So it feels a bit lackluster, and I don't really know what to do about that. So I'd love for you to comment down in the comment section below, how you would run that. I have been on Reddit, and a few people have said, well, Jarlaxle is definitely going to, betray them. He is using them as pawns. He doesn't really care about them, so you can continue on and have the battle run anyway. But at the same time, I really do trust the way that the book is written, and because this is the option that they can take, if they take it, why would I then have him attack them? He doesn't care about 10,000 gold pieces. He can make that up. What he cares about is getting a good standing with Lariel Silverhand. The last thing he wants is for these adventurers to ruin that. So why would he risk killing them or battling them just because they have 10,000 gold? If they get the dragon staff, it's really just 5,000 at the end. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen there. Now, I have prepped the dungeon for the dragon. I kind of know where Oranax is going to go with it. There's a good chance that they will be able to convince him. There's a good chance that they won't get the dragon staff. There's not a high chance they're going to battle the dragon unless they try and lure Jarlaxle into the vault to fight the dragon, which apparently is quite common. A lot of people have done that. They've lured him in, and then the battle is started and they all work together and they kill him. Now, there's so much that can happen because the gold dragon, if he doesn't agree with them and they don't pass their checks, he can verbally close the door, trapping them in there. And to be fair, if they actually team up with Jarlaxle Baneray to kill the dragon, I'm actually most likely in his last breath before he dies is to close the vault and trap them in there. And they do have ways of getting out because they will have some elves. The drow are still elves, I guess you could say, so they would count as an elf that they need to just get drunk. So their problem there would be getting them drunk. And on top of that, they still have the painting, and they would probably still have their shape changer drow, or they do have Sparrow who can change into creatures because he's a druid. So it doesn't really say that that is an option, but that is a shape changer, so he does, in my opinion, count. I'm glad my players want to go the doppelganger route because it adds more to the story. But yeah, I'm really torn on where to go with this. My other idea, and I'll have to let you know what I do because when game day comes, it's going to happen. The other idea is bring back in one of the other enemies, and I've been thinking who is most likely to show up, and I've whittled it down. It's not going to be the Castellantas. They've kind of already had their story with the assassin trying to kill Hooty, and they were helping him along. That's already been done and dealt with. So that leaves the Zhentarim with Manchun or Xanathar. Now, the Zhentarim have been prevalent throughout the whole story, but there's always been that confusion of Zhentarim Doom Raiders or Zhentarim Zhentil, and we're not really sure who they are and what they want, and we've never really pursued what's been going on, and they've always been around, but they haven't really affected us because, I don't know, they just didn't really feel very prominent in the story, as in game-changing. It's always really been around Zardoz and his ships. So the other option is Xanathar, and I'm thinking Xanathar is probably the best option. Not because Xanathar himself will show up, that's not going to happen. However, in the very first session, they run into, I think the name is Nihilnor, the Mind Flayer who works for Xanathar. So I'm considering having him show up with Maloon because they encounter Maloon talking to his sword and gather that information, but they never acted on it. So that means he's definitely been devoured by the intellect in his brain. He's working for Xanathar now. So I'm thinking those two could show up because the plushie on the bar for all those sessions has been scrying and watching them, and they've only recently destroyed that. So to find the vault, my last option is that Nihilnor is going to use a scrying crystal to spy on one of the characters that he is familiar with, which is most likely Hooty, because at the end of session 1, Hooty thought to himself, "Goodbye, Mr. Xanathar," and his response was, "I'm not Xanathar." So there's been some kind of connection there. He at least knows who he is, and I believe he did reply that his name was Hooty, or Mr. Scribetail, or something to that effect. So there is some kind of familiarity there. He has been spying on them inside the tavern, so he can also just scry inside the tavern whenever he wants now. But I'm going to try and scry on a particular person in terms of trying to figure out where the vault is so he knows where to go. So that'll at least create a battle. They can then lure the Mind Flayer in to fight the dragon as well, where he'll get absolutely annihilated. And Jarlaxle is going to allow it to happen because he doesn't really care if they do survive. So he's not going to stop these people from showing up. If anything, he might even tip them off because he does actually just want all the gold for himself. He just wants the job to be done inside. So there's a lot going on. That's the plan. Basically, this session coming up, they are going to have a drinking competition, which is going to be a lot of fun. They are going to probably try and persuade a doppelganger to join them on their way down to the vault. They are going to encounter a gold dragon and try and convince the gold dragon to let them have the gold and possibly fight the gold dragon. This is where it gets on really wishy-washy. You never really know. They're definitely going to have some kind of conclusion where they either trapped inside the vault because they teamed up on the dragon and killed it, or they're going to find the Mind Flayer fighting them outside of the vault, and then when they're weakened, Jarlaxle Baneray will show up and just ask for his money. Or on top of that, they may even ask him to go in with a couple of his Drowslingers because they'll realize that it is a adult gold dragon that can put out an average of 66 fire breath damage in one turn, which is ridiculous and will kill most of the characters. So fighting it isn't really going to be the best option, even though it does kind of protect the gold. But the main point is, it's going to be a mess, and I really have no idea what's going to happen. I'm planning for a couple of different routes because I think that's the best way to go. I've got it all set up on D&D Beyond with different encounter options because I just don't want to lock it in and railroad my characters into being forced to fight the Mind Flayer, even though they may have just fought the dragon and somehow survived, or being forced to give the money to Jarlaxle Baneray, even though maybe I planned that he's going to kill them anyway. Like, it's just, none of that makes any sense. This part of the chapter has to be left fluid, it has to be left open, so having multiple ways for it to go, I think is the best way for it to be planned. But I really want you to comment down below, how would you run this session? Because I'm really interested in where it's going to end. This will probably be the last session, and we might do an epilogue later on. I have a really cool idea for an epilogue that has absolutely nothing to do with the actual story. It's just a really cool thing that can happen in Waterdeep.